Welcome to Sundial. I'm Carlos Frias. Everyone needs a good hype man in their lives. Someone to boost them up, to tell others about all the good things they have going on. For Broward County artists, that man is Evan Snow. Evan's goal is to help build the community of artists in Broward. He does this by advocating for their work, their painting and poetry, their writing and sculpture. But maybe the most important thing Evan does is find artists affordable places to make their art. Evan started a program called Zero Empty Spaces. He finds vacant properties in strip malls and shopping centers and works with landlords to turn them into temporary artist studios. The landlord gets to attract people to their property, and the artists have an affordable place to work on their craft. The idea is spreading across the country. Evan has a soft spot for Broward. He grew up in Coral Springs. He watched his parents build community through education. He wants to do the same thing with the arts. To talk to us about his work and his passion is Evan Snow. Welcome, Evan.
Glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation and consideration.
Yeah, no, it's great to be able to talk about Broward County arts because I know that this is a real passion for you, that Miami is very much this, it draws a lot of gravity towards it, a lot of artists. But there are also really strong, thriving artist communities in Broward and West Palm Beach, and I'm sure those things have their own individual way of interacting with each other. So I'm so curious to really get into the idea of Broward, the Broward and the arts there.
Yeah, and of course, I got initial inspiration from my early ventures to Wynwood, and essentially, was going down for anything and everything that I could find, from my first ventures to obviously Miami Art Week and Art Basel in 2014 to 3 Points Music Festival in its second year back in the day.
Look at you being back in the day, the second year. All right.
How about that?
Yeah.
And I really just wanted to bring that up to my community in Broward County, where I'm very proud to be born and raised from. And thankfully found a very knowledgeable, passionate, and resourceful business partner, and my business partner, Mr. Andrew Martineau, who helped support me and our community in doing so. And we've done a lot of great things since.
Yeah. So you were looking around Broward and saying, we have everybody's cramming into these communities in Miami, and we have all the space. We have all these areas and all these places with their own vibe, and saying, how do we get some of that here, right?
Correct. And initially it started off, I was going, remember 2014, I know it's almost 10 years ago now, Wynwood was a little bit different than what it is now. Mm-hmm. That's another story for another day. And at that time, Fat Village, which was the arts district in Flagler Village in downtown Fort Lauderdale, was really starting to just pick up in traffic and activity. They were starting their art walk, and very humble beginnings, tens of people, dozens of people, hundreds of people. Yeah. I was really enjoying just going around and discovering and exploring and building relationships with these local artists. And they deserve the platform to be highlighted, discovered, and showcased. And while I was going around to go and see and do all these things within the arts and culture, I felt I needed to create something to show through visual storytelling, through Facebook Live, through podcasting, through Instagram stories, all these cool things that I was seeing and doing. So I initially started this with a social movement called Choose 954 to cultivate culture and community in my native Broward County in an effort to make this a better place to live and not just a better place to vacation. And that was initially that first platform, that first spark that we created, which led to Art Fort Lauderdale, the Art Fair on the Water, Fort Lauderdale Art and Design Week, and then inevitably Zero Empty Spaces, thankfully.
Yeah. And I want to talk about where kind of that inspiration, that real desire to pump up your community, the arts community, comes from. But I want to kind of start with Zero Empty Spaces.
Sure.
Because it seems like such a kind of a no-duh idea, right? Kind of a no-brainer. Like, look at all these, if you find these kind of empty bays in different shopping centers and strip malls, why can't this be an artist enclave, kind of impromptu artist enclave? How did you get the idea to do that? Like, where did that come from?
Sure. So, we initially, admittedly, we did not invent taking vacant space and making art studios. There was Bakehouse. There's something in Virginia called Torpedo Factory, and there's other projects throughout the country and throughout the world. Fortunately, my business partner was in the early stages, not only of Wynwood, sharing office space with Tony Cho, renting warehouses with the groups of artists for $100 a month that now sell for $40 million. He was also one of the first tenants in Fat Village, in the Arts District in Fort Lauderdale. So he had a lot of early stages grassroots experience with growing and supporting these arts communities. But more so than that, and I'm super fortunate for this, he was in the arts, got a little burnt out, went back to working for corporate. He had a background in advertising, shopping center, retail development. He went to work for one of the largest mall companies in the world, the Westfield Corporation. And he was a marketing executive, and essentially he developed vacancy management strategies and solutions for the mall, where he would take underutilized portions of the food court and make a commission-free art gallery. So it would help the mall drive traffic, keep feet in the street longer, retain shoppers, while also providing valuable opportunities to artists. So we were leaving a meeting one day after we had successfully been doing an art fair inside of luxury waterfront homes that were for sale, made only accessible via boat. That was Art Fort Lauderdale, the art fair on the water.
Okay.
And all these artists would come to us and say, hey, where are the studios at, let alone affordable? Simultaneously, at the same time, we got more involved with the real estate board, and we were having a lot of real estate developers and property managers and brokers and the like would say, can you do art in my commercial space? So we put our thinking caps on. At that time, this was in 2019, an article had just come out that day that stated Broward County was one of the least affordable counties for housing. And we turned and looked to ourselves and said, what if we could make this one of the most affordable places for artists to create and collaborate in? And what if there was no more empty spaces? And we thought zero empty spaces was an aptly fitting infinite title, infinite game that we could play. And we've since, that's led to 29 spaces that we've activated over the last 4 years, now in 3 states. And we've had over 400 artists come through the program, changing hundreds of artists' lives thousands of times over.
Wow. So it starts with a very utilitarian question, which is, you manage a mall, right? And you're like, how do I get people to these stores, so these folks can continue paying the rent? And you have these empty spaces and thinking, this is a way that I can drive traffic, which is kind of what happened in Wynwood, in
Correct.
the sense that you drive traffic because people are going for the art, and then it kind of builds things around them, right?
And the arts are a proven model for building community. I'm not going to, speculate and talk on the quote-unquote Wynwood effect, but it was those early-stage commercial real estate developers who happened to have a passion for the arts that did go to these traditional industrial warehouse districts where they were discovering these artists. And then, subsequently, as we know the story goes, Tony Goldman and Craig Robbins and Moishe Mana and all these people, bought them up. And the arts obviously have been clearly a proven model to spur growth and development and traffic. We're doing it, though, in a more sustainable way. We're not displacing anybody. Nobody's getting gentrified by putting artists in a mall or in a shopping center. Well,
which is an interesting point too. Is we know it the world over that artists come in, they make an area cool, and then they eventually get priced out, right? And that's part of what your model is, right? Is like finding affordable spaces for artists. Like ultimately, the artists will go where they can be for, like you said, $100 a month, or there's different projects I've heard where there's some subsidies or what have you, just to bring in artists, knowing that ultimately brings people.
Correct. And thankfully, the novelty of the initiative and activation and us being arts advocates and doing this to create affordable working artist studios is a little different versus if we were just going to do a traditional gallery, where a traditional gallery is more in line with just sales, understandably, and those spaces would be subject to full market rental rates. But because of our overall arts advocacy initiatives, because of the placemaking benefits and activation and events and press and buzz and all of the great things that come as a result of these activations of these spaces, thankfully, we've drawn attention from some of the largest property owners and developers in the world, the Simon Mall and Brookfield Property Group, to offer us a space and work out an agreement that is mutually beneficial, that allows us to make the space available to the artists at the price that we're able to make it available for, which in South Florida at the moment starts at $2.50 per square foot, generally on a month-to-month basis with the water and the electric included. And we make it very simple so an artist could just pay, show up and paint. There is an application process, but one of the things we pride ourselves on, which I really hope your listeners appreciate this, which I think they will, we pride ourselves on being inclusionary. So a lot of the traditional art spaces here, which I know, love, and support, the Bakehouse, the Fountainhead, all those places, you generally have to have a very long CV. You have to have an MFA. You have to know somebody. You have to be part of the Cool Kids Club. You could be the most talented artist in the world, but if you don't have one of those things, you're probably not getting into one of those spaces. We pride ourselves being inclusionary, that we pair emerging, mid-career, and established artists in a space together where they could learn, collaborate from one another, support one another. And we've seen, and not just that their skill level and their expertise, one of the coolest experiences is pairing artists from different backgrounds of walks of life. And we have artists that are young, black, old, young, old, gay, straight, purple, orange, alien, and everything else in between. And by putting them in a space together, we've seen some beautiful relationships happen, beautiful collaborations happen. And it's really, it's just provided so many win-win-win benefits and success stories that we're proud and excited to continue doing it the rest of our lives.
Yeah. I would imagine that there's a part of it where you're making a bit of a sales pitch, right? A sales pitch to the artists, but also a sales pitch to the landlords. Like, here's why this is good for you, and artist, here's why this is good for you. Because,
Sure.
Everybody wants to be in the cool area. Like, how do you make a cool area first? It's like chicken and egg thing. Talk to me about that. Like, what is the pitch that you made to landlords to give up this spot and a negotiated rate of what is it, $250 a square foot?
In Florida, yes. And then some of the states, they're a little higher utility costs. But thankfully, full transparency, we don't pitch anybody. They reach out to us, and we can't force anybody to do it. The property owners have to want to do it, and the artists have to want to do it. Now, we make it very easy for the property owners and the landlords. We serve as one point of contact. We know how to speak their language, with Andrew having been in commercial real estate development and shopping center management with Westfield. I was a realtor previously as well. We assume all liability for the space, so we take care of everything. We provide our own insurance. We do the build out, we do the permitting, we do the leasing, we do the signage, we do the branding, we do the events, we do the artist application. We facilitate all those steps of the process. And by serving as one point of contact for the property owner and for the artist alike, it just makes it a lot easier. We're very resourceful. We also have a marketing agency, the Unitas Group, that facilitates the branding, the logo, the website, and all of those things at a very high level, that it's very tasteful and it's very authentic. It's very transparent with everybody. For the artists, yes, there is a sales pitch per se, but it is truly the opportunity of a lifetime, because every artist, most artists, would more than likely want to have an opportunity to be in a retail sales environment, a gallery, on Las Olas, Main Street, USA, or any shopping center.
Right.
And it's just the cost of entry, the barrier of entry is so high. So by taking a 3,000 square foot space and breaking it up into, 15 or 20 small studio spaces at a very affordable rate, generally $250 a month, there's very little risk involved. It's month to month. So if their situation changes, if it doesn't work out monetarily, there's no penalty to discontinue. And we don't take any commission on anything that they sell. They could host classes, workshops. We have artists that do one workshop a month, charge $50, get 5 people, rent's paid. They could do that. They could do that every single day.
Wow. And, it's incredibly altruistic. Like, this is an incredible, so how do you make that model work? This obviously takes a chunk of your time, and at $250 a square foot, how do you keep that sustainable? How do you pay, how do you pay the creative marketing agency? How do you keep the lights on for yourself so that you can keep helping artists
So you mentioned the word altruism, and thankfully Andrew keyed me in on that very early on when we first started meeting and partnering. And we do good on all of these missions without our handout really asking or expecting anything in return. Now, understandably, we're not independently wealthy people that can go around the county, the state, or now the country and beyond willy-nilly just opening these art spaces on a whim. Also, full transparency, we don't have a funder. We don't have a philanthropist. I don't have a rich uncle. We don't get grants. And we do this as you just alluded to, very resourcefully, because we take care of all of those creative marketing, advertising components, the operations components. That allows us to absorb the cost so we could keep it affordable to artists. Because if I had to pay $3,000 a month to 5 different agencies, it's not going to be $2.50 a square foot. We're not doing this ultimately to make the most amount of money possible, or we would have to be charging more. But we do this because it's the right thing to do. We've seen the impacts and benefits of this program and similar programs. We're big fans of Bakehouse. We're big fans of Torpedo Factory. We're big fans of these other proven models. We just wanted to make that available within our community. And if we are able to cover our expenses, cover the build out, and cover a little bit of our time, then that's been more than fine for us in the first 4 years of this journey. We are getting into other conversations. We are looking to acquire permanent spaces. We just did sign our first full-term permanent lease, a 3-year lease on a property.
Wow.
Which we're very excited about, to make a new opportunity available for artists in Fort Lauderdale. And we do want to eventually, now that we're been getting more in this placemaking conversation, we do want to work on like adaptive reuse projects. If you've ever been to Ponce Market in Atlanta.
Of course, yep. I've been there. I'm a former Atlanta resident and a big fan, yeah.
Yes, I voted for Greg Maddux in the Hall of Fame.
That's right. That's right. The man has read my bio at some point.
So we want to be able to do stuff like that, where we could take, formerly vacant spaces that weren't doing any good for the community and make those permanent art spaces. And then when we get to a point in the future where we have more capital, resources, partners, so on and so forth, we have, a ton of other initiatives that we'd like to roll out for other various creatives. And we're starting to do that now with film, being big film advocates as well.
Our guest today is Evan Snow. He's an arts leader and creative entrepreneur in Broward. His project, Zero Empty Spaces, creates affordable artist studios in vacant storefronts around the country. And the idea for you guys started here in Broward County. And I know Broward County is obviously close to your heart because that's where you're born and raised, right?
It is.
So talk to me about that, about like where this idea, like, because at the heart of it is an altruism, right? Is not, which is, like you have a real estate background. It's like, and your partner, Andrew is also has like a marketing background, and it's not trying to squeeze the last bit out of it. It's rather creating an artist, a place where artists can develop. And I'm just curious kind of where this altruistic feeling kind of comes from in your life.
So I'll give a brief moment and shout out to my parents.
Always a shout out to the parents is great.
And I love to tell the story now as I'm going about speaking on this book tour that my parents met with my mother living in Kendall and my father living in North Miami in the 70s. They met without a cell phone, internet, or GPS. They met through something called Landmark Education, the Landmark Forum. They were involved with the founder, Warner Earhart, through something called S Training. It kind of predated Gratitude Training. It was like a self-help, personal development seminar series, workshop series. And they were very passionate. It had a profound impact on their lives and many people's lives around them.
That sounds like a very 70s meet, both program and a way to meet, right?
Oh, yeah. It was great. And hey, listen, I'm here because of it. So I'm a Landmark baby. But, fortunately, they just had these genes that they passed down to me in my DNA of loving to help people. And
I'm sure you saw that in your everyday life with them, right?
Of course. Thankfully so. They're great people, great energy. And then the other part that I like to mention, my father grew up in New Hyde Park, Long Island, in Nassau County, playing the game of lacrosse. And lacrosse, when I was growing up, it was very big in the Northeast and in Maryland, but it wasn't in the rest of the country. And my father and my godfather, Jerry Krause, and a lot of the coaches that I grew up playing lacrosse with, we played as a club sport against the private schools. They advocated for this game to FHSAA, the Florida High School Sports Association, as well as the state and national meetings, to the point the year after I graduated high school, it became an FHSAA public school sport, and now it's one of the fastest growing sports in the country and in the world. And I'd like to think that advocacy that I watched my father do, which earned him a spot in the U.S. Lacrosse Hall of Fame, those genes were also instilled and passed down into my DNA as well. I just found another mission and another purpose when I discovered my love for art by going to Wynwood back in 2014, that I wanted to make this art thing more accessible, more prominent in my community, where at the time it wasn't so much Fort Lauderdale. Understandably, it's very big on hospitality and tourism, one of the largest ports, one of the largest airports, the beach, so on and so forth.
Right.
But, when I go and travel, I like to go and see and do the things the locals do. And I came to find there was a budding, emerging art scene. It just didn't really have that marketing component to it. And I really felt that if I could show people better than I could tell people with my cell phone and a hashtag with this Choose 954 thing, it would make this a better place to live and not just a better place to vacation. And it has succeeded in doing so.
Yeah, it sounds like your dad, you learned how systems work. Like how does any particular system work, and how do I make a change within it? And then you applied that to the arts. Like, what do I see in a system here, and how do I change that? So you said you started kind of this with cell phones and kind of highlighting individual folks. In what way? Like, tell me, what was your day job? Because I know you weren't doing that.
Great question.
Yeah.
So I was a recruiter, and I actually talk about systems. So recruiting, staffing, headhunting, it was placing people in jobs. So I would learn how to fit a square peg in a round hole. And I recruited for some pretty fair size staffing agencies and recruited on behalf of even bigger companies, multi-billion-dollar enterprise companies. So I learned how systems and operations worked. And fortunately, it was that experience recruiting when I started listening to TED Talks on my lunch break and started to go to my parents' house after work to listen to TED Talks, started attending TEDx NSU every year that they were having it on the campus of Nova Southeastern. I was gaining a lot of inspiration and motivation. And fortunately, around that time, there was a gentleman by the name of Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V. He's a successful startup founder, advertising executive, author, speaker. He took one of the first Uber rides. He was one of the first investors in Facebook, Airbnb, and a lot of things. And he was preaching entrepreneurship. And he was preaching, don't do stuff you hate. And if you put your head down and grind on something for 3 years, you could wake up and you're still 33 years old. And I happen to have been 30 years old when he said that.
Oh, so it really struck a chord with you.
It did.
And so, I mean, you could have applied that to a host of things. Why the arts? At what point did the arts and the creation of arts, where did that come into your life in such a way where it focused your attention?
Well, I'm going to give you the true version of the story. It actually started more on the culture side of things.
Okay.
I really actually started with food blogging.
Oh, you were like a first food influencer then.
Back in the day, before food blogging really was what it was, and this was in the days of Foursquare.
Okay.
It was kind of like Vimeo.
I do remember it. So give me a time frame more or less.
This was 2014.
2014.
So I met a woman at a training seminar, and on the break, she was telling me she was receiving cool stuff for writing an article, aka a blog post about it. And she was getting paid to do that. And
so immediately, like, all right, I can make some money doing this. I can also, maybe I could get some food out of it.
Correct.
You're a young guy.
I actually went to, my friends would say I love the places that Snow stops at. I go by my last name, not a big fan of my first name. And because I was
Why not?
Sorry, Mom, I know, but we've gotten over it.
Wait, if you don't see yourself as an Evan, what do you see yourself as?
As Mr. Snow.
Oh, okay. Isn't that the line? Mr. Snow is my father.
Yeah, right. But you're my friend now, so you can call me whatever you like to call me,
right
Mr. Snow or otherwise. But I was going to these restaurants, I was taking pictures of food, and I wasn't really doing anything with it. And fortunately, I had some friends that were into Yelp and were into some of those platforms back then, and they encouraged me to start Snow Stops Food Blog. And actually, it started not right down the street, a little bit down the street at Randazzo's on Miracle Mile. I was there with my recruiting company. They dropped $1,500 on lunch. I had literally just started this food blog, and I turned to the owner, Mark Randazzo, a world championship boxer retired, and I said, hey, I got this food blog thing. Would you like me to cover your place? And because the company I was with just dropped $1,500 on lunch, he said, yeah, sure, come, I'll comp your meal. And that was really it. And long story short, food blogging got me invited to go to events like tastings and pairings. Going to tastings and pairings got me to meet marketing and PR professionals. Meeting those marketing and PR professionals made me realize, well, I could do these events too. And then fortunately, shortly thereafter, I met Andrew, who had extensive marketing and advertising and agency experience. He had been past president of the American Advertising Federation. He worked for Saatchi and JWT, some of the largest agencies in the world. And he would always say, I'm an artist, but I like nice things, so I couldn't be a full-time artist, so I got into advertising.
Right.
And thankfully, that confluence of events led to Choose 954 as as my initial venture, and then fortunately Andrew and I started fleshing out ideas, which led to Art Fort Lauderdale, the Art Fair on the Water, and all of the other things that we've since undertaken.
So you got yourself in a position where you could start putting on events and then bringing artists into the fold, like highlighting them that way. And at what point did you put on an event and thought something special is happening here? Whether it was an artist that you brought in or it was a certain kind of reaction. When were some of those moments, those early moments that you were doing things where it went beyond what you were doing, kind of like writing blogs to get some food, to get some, a little money here and there for what you were doing, but it went beyond that. You were doing something where you were bringing other people, you were putting the spotlight on other people.
So I met Andrew at the Tower Club, members only club. It was a TEDx simulcast event that a lawyer, attorney friend, Professor Natalie Budo was hosting. She invited me to, and after the event, some old gray-haired guy sent to the right of me, said, "Hey, what do you do?" I had just started Choose 954 at this time. Mm-hmm. He could have cared less, but thankfully there was a very sharply dressed Trinidadian brother with a Dolly mustache and a Zara suit sitting to my left, who ended up being Andrew. He took a liking to it. We started meeting for coffee at the Tower Club, which is on top of the Regents Bank building, downtown Fort Lauderdale, overlooks all of Broward County. And
you're like, I'm with these movers and shakers. What do we do? What do we do with all these people in this room?
And he was really a mover and shaker, but he was still working for corporate. And essentially on our third meeting, we were identifying gaps and voids of things that were missing in Broward County. Art Basel at this time was already the biggest thing in the world for art. Mm-hmm. We never had that. We have a tented fair that takes place on Las Olas 4 times a year. Nobody's flying in to go see that. There's no after parties. There's no artist talks. It is what it is. It's a tented fair.
You're like, if I can take 10% of that, if I can take even 1% of the overflow of Art Basel, and instead of them having, being blocks away, because Art Basel is on Miami Beach, and if this is happening somewhere in Allapattah, you're like, maybe if I could put them in Las Olas, like that 1%, maybe that's a way to where we start.
Correct. And we saw that there were very unique. So every art fair in the world is done in a tent, convention center, or hotel. You go into these big mazes. You have to fight traffic, fight parking. You get art fatigued. That is the model that they've all subscribed to. Right. So we looked at the unique elements of Fort Lauderdale. We've got a beautiful Las Olas intercoastal waterway system, the Venice of the Americas. We have a water taxi that very few places in the world have, and we have beautiful homes and architecture on the water. So we turned to ourselves and said, we want to do a big event. We want to do Basel and Broward. What if we could do the first art fair in the world inside of luxury waterfront homes that are for sale, made only accessible via boat, eliminate the traffic, $5 flat rate parking for the day at the marina, and the art was in every room and corner of the home, and these were independent artists not represented by a gallery. Generally, Art Basel, it's only galleries. The cost and the barrier of entry is so high that an independent artist is never going to get into the convention center in all reality. So we made it super accessible and super affordable, and then we programmed it very well. Opening VIP reception and tour for collectors, after parties every night at all of the hotels on the beach, the W, the Ritz, so on and so forth, a series of artist talks. And thankfully, based off the novelty of that event, Katie had covered it previously, WLRN,
right, our
PBS,
boss here.
PBS Art Loft, and thankfully the press took onto it. And in closing, our goal with that event was really to put Fort Lauderdale on the art world map as an international destination to view and interact with art, and as evident by getting in Forbes and CNN Travel and Architectural Digest and NPR, we succeeded in our mission, and that ultimately did lead the way to the creation of Zero Empty Spaces.
It's pretty genius in the sense that, like, listen, if I have a luxury house that I'm trying to sell, and you can automatically from their point of view, saying, if I can put a spotlight in it, and then an artists are like, wow, you mean I can put my art in front of a lot of people, whatever the venue, like that's those two things. You saw a place where those two things could meet,
and it still is one of the most unique art experiences overall. I went to actually last time I was on Sundial 4 years ago, I had just gone to the Venice Biennale, which is the longest running art fair in the world. And it's a great event, and it's the country representatives of art take a pavilion, and they do these really cool art installations, but that's its own thing. That's unique. Those aren't local artists that are there proud to represent their art piece and tell you about their artwork. So this was a very unique, very one of a kind experience, where also, when you go from one fair to the next, you have to either get back in your car, try to fight the traffic, maybe try to get an Uber when you're going during Art Basel season. Here, you get to hop back on a boat and you're on the water on Las Olas, and you get time to think about what you just saw, have conversations with your friends or other people on the boat. And it was just a very leisurely Fort Lauderdale experience that eliminated a lot of the things that we were not enjoying. I mean, of course, we're still coming to Art Basel. It is still, the biggest thing for art in the world, and thankfully it's right down the street from us here in Miami.
Well, it's also a reflection of like why people move to Broward versus living maybe in a more hectic, highly concentrated area like Miami. So it kind of reflects that vibe a little bit.
And the lifestyle, correct.
And the lifestyle.
Of the water and all those things. And
yeah.
And it served its purpose. It's a great thing. The last time we did it was January 2020. We did it 4 years annually. It led the way to Fort Lauderdale Art and Design Week, which we did create to expand out throughout the county for all the arts organizations, institutions, and artists that we know and love and support throughout the whole entire year. We wanted to leverage that platform, leverage the buzz, leverage all of the social content to support everybody else, from, the Frank in Pembroke Pines to, the Baca in Pompano to the Hollywood Art and Culture Center. And thankfully that event has been a PRSA award-winning campaign for just the way that we undertake these tactics to show and highlight art throughout the county. And it's changed, just that initiative has changed so many artists' lives. You guys did a great story on an artist that discovered a very important part of their family history on Sistrunk, with a very prominent lynching involved, that I encourage people to look up. And that discovery purely came through the fact that that artist was exhibiting in an event during the Art Week as part of this Sistrunk affair, where they saw a picture, and it ended up being a family member of theirs that had been lynched back in the day. And she reconnected with her mom and said, yeah, that's your uncle. And she created a beautiful art piece. Katie covered it, and it made it onto like NPR. I think it won like a Smithsonian award. And that purely came by us creating this platform for an art week, not just in the homes and the boats, but on Sistrunk and the other parts of the community. And also, super side note, we don't charge anybody to participate in the art week.
Oh, that was my next question. It's kind of like I kept thinking, like, how do you make it affordable? How do you make it accessible? And that's how you do it. Is you don't charge folks to participate.
We do them, and once again, we're very resourceful, with social media, with marketing, with advertising, website, public relations. So thankfully, we knew, if we were going to charge, it wouldn't be as inclusive. So we encourage, and we have relationships with all the arts and culture institutions throughout the county now, obviously. So we encourage them to submit their event. We list it on the website for free. Anybody can do an event, and we've had really cool things. There's one event we would like to bring it back. We started an artcation because artists wanted more opportunities to create, get discovered and collected and shown, and we actually started talking to boutique hotels that had vacant rooms, and we put 3 artists up in a 1-week art residency during Fort Lauderdale Art and Design Week, where they got to stay at a hotel, create at the end, have a showcase exhibit. It was a beautiful thing. So we love doing these things because they're the right thing to do. We're going to do it if we get support, from county or philanthropists or not. But we do these things, as you kind of alluded to, altruistically with the resources that we have to move the needle forward. And thankfully, we've been successful in moving that needle forward in Broward County.
Our guest today is Evan Snow. He's an arts leader and creative entrepreneur in Broward County. Evan, you guys have obviously had success here, growing this project kind of bit by bit. But I know that it all stems from there being so many challenges for artists in South Florida to find places to create art, to find places that are affordable. I mean, as rents go up, it's obviously it becomes more unaffordable to live here, but also commercially, like that's something that becomes harder and harder. Talk to me about some of the things you hear from artists about keeping them local.
Sure. I mean, it is tough. Obviously, we're very well aware of the housing situation and real estate prices, and I wish I could certainly control or influence that process more in favor of the artists, but thankfully, just by elevating the arts and storytelling and talking about the importance of the art, talking about the importance of the creative economy, another thing we're grateful that Katie and WLRN has covered previously, is just to get people to be more cognizant of the importance of the arts to our way of life, to our culture, to our economy, so that they could hopefully be that much more supportive, even little things like we have an art leasing division where we give businesses or individuals the opportunity to lease art for their vacant walls in their home, office, or boat, or whatever the case may be, while not purchasing it full price. By paying a fractional amount on a monthly basis, that's putting dollars back in artists' pocket that they can now pay their rent, go to the art supply store. That's more of the creative economy conversation that we like to have. So just by elevating...
An artist timeshare. You can keep selling the same piece over and over.
Yeah,
that's
and
great.
It is. And by elevating these conversations, I think that's what I talk about by moving the needle forward, to have people be a little bit more cognizant when you're going to go buy that next art piece. Sure, you could go to a gallery. That's fine. Sure, you could go to Michael's, and that's fine too. But when you purchase a piece of art from a local artist, it goes a lot further, and there's a lot of data and economics behind that. So that's the best part we can control. We do want to get into live workspaces. We are hoping we finally find the right developer, and we have seen Related do some projects, and we have seen some other, CRAs do some live work projects, but we really need more live workspaces for artists, and hopefully in our next evolution we can start developing those spaces.
Well, there has to be an element where you have to convince someone that an art space made more affordable is more valuable than another Lululemon, right?
And I love Lululemon, and they've been great to our nonprofits as well. Actually, that you say that, but I mean, I wish rest in peace, Tony Goldman was here. He would tell you. We brought in Craig Robbins to speak to our Chamber of Commerce, and he told everybody in Fort Lauderdale that was there, which was the whole chamber, I made art a focal point of the design district. I'll always keep art a focal point of the design district. And he told us very clearly and very succinctly, when he bought the design district, it was $5 a square foot. And he told the story of how by integrating and keeping art a focal point of the design district, he touched $5,000 a square foot, which, it's a very unique place, understandably, but the arts have that ability positively to transform communities. But if we price out the artists, then they're not going to continue to be able to live, work, and create. So we do need to find happy mediums and models. And we think live workspaces and us acquiring some spaces, we're trying to maybe buy some duplexes and stuff like that we can keep artists at an affordable rate creating here in our community.
It's I love talking about art, like structures, right? About how you make these structures affordable. But let's also talk about the specific. So, talk to me about some of the Broward artists that you're excited about. Folks who are doing interesting things as artists, whether that's poets or visual artists or dance, whatever it is. Talk to me about some individuals that you really want to put out there.
Sure. One of the most talented artists in the program that Katie and Gerard covered on their last biannual story about Zero Empty Spaces on WLRN is an artist from Broward, from Hollandale, by the name of Pablo Matute. He went to Broward College. He actually recently graduated, and he got accepted into an MFA program at a university in Missouri, which we're very excited to support him with. He actually decided to delay it for another year, so he is still here working and creating in our Zero Empty Spaces number 11 Gulfstream Park location. He's a surrealist artist, kind of similar to Dali, uses a lot of charcoal pencil, visionary, very talented young kid, very humble, very soft-spoken, very well-spoken. We did a podcast together, and he is so passionate about the arts that he had a tendon that I guess tore in his arm that would generally prohibit artists from continuing to create, especially with charcoal pencil. And he showed us on this podcast how he would rub the tendon like back into place so he could continue creating because he was that passionate about it.
Wow.
And he's one of the most talented surreal artists you'll ever see. We can only imagine what this MFA and that whole process, and he's actually going to get a chance to teach at the university, what that's going to do for him. But he's from Broward, went to Broward College, still, lives and works. Thankfully, we have a studio in Hollandale Beach right around the corner from where he grew up. He's probably one of the most talented rising stars, one to watch within the Broward art scene that I know and love.
And so, perfect example, like that's a guy that I would imagine you want to keep local, right? You want him to be his own, kind of his own son, to have his own gravity, right? And to bring and to keep artists here and bring other artists here. So, talk to me about some of those ways that you try to do that, right? Keeping that in mind.
So, that's a great question. I have a bunch of other initiatives that I undertake to do that. I was initially inspired by a monthly breakfast lecture series, a mini TED Talk. that I still host and continue to keep for free every second Friday morning of the month, called Creative Zen, that we do at the Cotilla Gallery inside the Alvin Sherman Library on the campus of NSU. And I bring in local people, artists, thought leaders, entrepreneurs, yoga instructors, to share their thought-provoking, relatable, inspiring story. If it had a profound impact on my life and served as my aha moment, as I outlined in my first book, Learning to Choose, I recently released, I could only imagine what impact it could have and has had on other people's lives. So I continue to host it, keep it for free, bring in other thought-provoking, inspiring speakers, and we have all of the replays on our YouTube and social media page. And then we also, another thing, like a lot of people have ideas, but they don't know how to execute on them. One of the only people I ever reached out to in Miami to bring their idea to Broward was a gentleman by the name of Ivan Dynamo De Jesus, who started something called Axen Club, AXEN, Action and Zen, which is a goal-setting accountability mini mastermind group. You come with an idea, a startup, a passion project, or none of those things, and literally the brain trust and the power of the room and people sitting at the table help you innovate and accelerate your concept.
Kind of like a writer's workshop. You bring it in and you workshop an idea into something that you can create, and also helps keep you local.
And it does help keep people local. And if they want to go beyond, they can go beyond. But we help people smart their goals, specific, measurable, action-oriented results with the time constraint. And we meet bi-weekly. So we leave people with, like, what are 3 things you could do in the next 2 weeks? And we've seen great art projects. We helped our friends start Raw Storytelling. Our version of the Moth, Enid, that was her goal. She wanted to start this storytelling series, and we supported her in doing that. And it's been one of the most rewarding and fulfilling things. Artists, creatives, entrepreneurs, passion projects. One woman came. She said, I want a hula hoop at festivals. And God bless her, she is getting invited and paid to go hula hoop at festivals. And that fills my heart. And there's thousands of success stories. One of my favorite things to do.
Part of it, I think about all these ideas and you bringing in people together to develop these ideas. That's what creates an artist community, I think. And so I'm curious, everything having its own identity, talk to me about how the Broward identity of this artist community you're building is different than like the Miami one.
It is different because Broward is one of the more culturally diverse places, and there are like just as many, if not more, languages spoken in Broward County. But Broward County, I don't think this is going to be a mystery to anybody. It's less foo fancy, less woo woo, less seen and be seen, as opposed to some parts of Miami. No disrespect to Miami in that regard. I love South Point Park on Sundays and that whole thing. But
aerial yoga, sure.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But it's Broward is you could definitely, like, there are billionaires that will walk in that are wearing shorts and flip flops, right. And sure, there are billionaires in other places, but you're not. This is one thing I always say about Miami. I'll walk into a place. They might not know me. They don't know me. First thing they do, and you probably know this too, they look at your shoes, they look at your watch, they look at your belt. And I don't wear any, designer stuff like that. So I could have all the resources in the world. I could help change hundreds of artists' lives in that room. But unfortunately, I found in other places, they're not as inclusive and they're not more understanding and laid back. And in Broward, that identity, that culture is a little bit more mindful. And thankfully, I've gotten involved in the mindfulness and yoga community and integrate mindfulness into a lot of my work. Yoga has had a profound impact on my life. I just got back from my first yoga retreat with my teacher and coach, Chloe Ravel, the Gemini Rising. And I now am trying to integrate this holistic, mindful, balanced approach to the work we do within the arts, the community building, because, sure, there's places where you could be pretentious, but, everybody started at zero, everybody started at the same place, and everybody deserves an opportunity, and I'm here to help support and provide that.
Talk to me about what you would like to see Broward do next, right? Like, as it develops its own identity and its own spaces. I know that you have 100,000 ideas in your head, but just let's start with one. What would you like to see Broward do next?
Oh, Carlos.
The problem is that I'm limiting you to one. But no, I'm not.
I would like Broward to reprioritize funding to tangible initiatives that are proven to make economic impact and viable models. And unfortunately, Broward County, not my term, has previously been referred to as a cultural wasteland. I did not invent that. But we are making progress. We were successful, Andrew primarily, as private citizens in recruiting the film commissioner from Miami-Dade County to be the film commissioner in Broward, Sandy Leiterman. And as a result of doing that, film is having a resurgence and a renaissance in Broward, making a huge economic impact. So just prioritizing funding and support to the arts in Broward. I mean, obviously that's my main thing that I'm here to advocate for. And really, I mean, I'd love the county commissioners to invite us to the county hall. I mean, I have friendships and relationships with a lot of city commissioners, but you know, I don't know why they just don't find what we're doing important enough, and they decide to give money to other initiatives that might not be able to make the same impact. I have respect for other event producers and other people, but I think it's time that Broward County realizes we're here to stay. We're here to do good work in the community, and we do need funding and support to continue to do this, because we can't self-fund art fairs, art weeks, art spaces. We're not independently wealthy people.
Right. So, I mean, as a guy who understands systems, who literally studies them from the ground up, I imagine that that's something that you're looking very closely at too, is like, how do you get people to decide that it's important, right? And then having the people represent them decide that it's important. That's
without being a politician.
Without being a politician, right? How do you do that?
Storytelling, continuing to show up, continuing to stay consistent. I did outline my journey, and not just my journey and my story, but learning lessons I acquired as an aspiring creative entrepreneur in my first book, Learning to Choose, where, you know, I tell people how I made choices. I stepped outside of my comfort zone, and that led me to unlocking my hidden potential. And if I was a regular Johnny 9-to-5 recruiter that was able to do this, anybody could do this. So now I'm going around speaking, sharing more of the gospel. And I'd really like to think that when I went to Art Basel the first time in December 2014, I have the post on Facebook. I posted, "Who wants to go to Art Basel?" None of my friends responded. And I made one of the best choices in my life, that I got in the car, I went down there myself, and I fell in love with Wynwood. And if I wouldn't have made that choice and stepped outside of my comfort zone, we would probably not be sitting here right now.
If that was the model, if that was like an inspiration for it, what do you see? What do you want to see the Broward arts community become?
I'd like to see a place, Broward arts community, where any artist, emerging, mid-career, established, or otherwise, can be a full-time artist. We've been able to support artists in doing that, not every artist, but ideally the business community and stakeholders should want to support more. The philanthropy dollars primarily that go into the arts in Broward County, unfortunately, primarily go to putting names on buildings, and that's great, and that's all well and good, and I'm all supportive of the Art and Culture Center in Hollywood and the NSU Art Museum and Coral Springs Museum of the Arts and all those places, but I'd like to reprioritize some of that funding to actually go to the places where it's needed the most, and that's the grassroots, local, emerging artists, so that they could get that little boost that could help take them to the next level, so they can invest in their practice, buy more art supplies, work on a project. There are some resources available. We're hosting more free business workshops for artists through our Zero Empty Spaces location to help equip them and to help inform them and to help empower them to be, because we really think in a place like Broward County, where there's no shortage of money, artists should be able to be full-time artists, but they need support from individuals, philanthropists, collectors, the business community, and otherwise.
Put your name on a program instead of on a building. Evan, thank you so much for spending the hour with us.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it.
Our guest today is Evan Snow. He's an arts leader and creative entrepreneur in Broward County. His project, Zero Empty Spaces, creates affordable artist studios around the country. You can find more information at zeroemptyspaces.com. And that's Sundial for Thursday, August 17th. Leslie Olaya Atkinson is our lead producer. Elisa Baena is our producer and social media editor. Helen Acevedo helped produce the show. Sergio Bustos is WLRN's VP of News. Katie Munoz is our Director of Live Programming. Peter J. Mertz is WLRN's VP of Radio. Engineering our board today is Richard Ives. Our theme music is by the Miami Afro-Cuban funk band Palo at gopalo.com. You can download a podcast of this program. Just search for WLRN Sundial on your podcast app. Coming up next week on the program, what does it mean to be a conservationist through poetry? The writer Yadira Peralta will tell us. I'm Carlos Frias. Good vibes only.